After delays and an adjournment in December, the ANC is resuming its 55th National Conference today. The party is committed to finalizing all its work before its 111th birthday celebrations on Sunday in Mangaung. Earlier, the party holding a media briefing on what to expect in the coming days in Bloemfontein. eNCA senior reporter Siphamandla Goge is on the ground watching the developments there, joining us now live on Today this afternoon. Good afternoon, Ncome, and compliments to you. Now, from what the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, had to lay out earlier, it looks like, it seems like it's going to be a busy few days for the governing party.
That's correct. It's going to be very busy because they need to complete what they did not complete, and they need to make sure that they wrap up the most important aspect of the conference, which discusses policy issues. They need to come up with declarations and resolutions. Remember, the national conference is not only about electing leadership, even though that first aspect of electing national leadership of the ANC was done, and now they did not have enough time to deal with the issue of the commissions. They would need to break into various groups and form commissions, discuss issues of energy. As we speak, ESCOM has upgraded to stage 4 load shedding from stage 3. They need to discuss the issue of ESCOM. They need to resolve on that issue. They need to discuss the sluggish economic growth in South Africa, unemployment, poverty, inequality, crime. South Africa is one of those countries with the highest crime rate, violent crime in the world. They need to talk about that. Gender-based violence, femicide, the issue of peace and stability, South Africa's borders, and all of those things, they need to be discussed, and they need to have resolutions. Those are the things that they discussed during their policy conference in June, July last year. Those recommendations were taken over to this 55th National Conference of the ANC. In December, they adjourned it only to resume today in a hybrid format. Now, what that means is officials of the ANC, 7 of them, and members of the National Executive Committee of the governing party are in Bloemfontein physically because they need to prepare for Sunday's celebrations. It's the January 8th statement which will be delivered by the president of the ANC, Mr. Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa, but that statement will be on behalf of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So the newly elected NEC is meeting here, and members of the interim provincial committee of the ANC in the Free State, which is a host province, they are also meeting here, joining this conference that is underway in a form of a physical presence in Bloemfontein, but others are joining virtually from various centers across the country. I've spotted Mr. Sihle Zikalala here, who received the highest number of votes in terms of being elected as the ANC's National Executive Committee member. He's also the MEC responsible for cooperative governance and international affairs in KwaZulu-Natal. The meeting, or rather the conference, has adjourned for now. They are on lunch break till 3:30. When they resume, they will continue with commissions. Earlier on, we spoke to the Secretary General of the ANC, Mr. Fikile Mbalula. We asked him about this quagmire that the ANC finds itself in. They have to deal with the issue of their Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, who's not a member of the executive. David Mabuza, the current Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, did not make it back to the ANC's top leadership structure, and also there is a vacancy that will be created by Mr. Mbalula's pending resignation as the Minister of Transport, because his job at Luthuli House is a full-time occupation. There was another vacancy that was created by the departure of Ayanda Dlodlo many months ago. So ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, who's also the President of the Republic of South Africa, will have to navigate around that. The ANC prefers that its president and deputy president preferably are deployed to government. How are they going to navigate around that with Paul Mashatile and also with Mbalula's departure? It simply means then that the president of the republic will have to apply his mind whether to reconfigure his executive or do a total overhaul of cabinet reshuffle. This is how Mr. Mbalula responded to that question.
The officials will apply their mind on that. It's not only that, there are many other issues that we'll be discussing. President also is looking at the issue of replacement in cabinet. So in the next week, after this conference on January 8, we are hard at work. in terms of the new restructuring. We're hard at work in terms of government structure, cabinet, how is it going to look like, and so on. The president will have applied his mind on some of these issues. We'll be hard at work in terms of preparing for the government Lekgotla and the ANC Lekgotla and the constituting new committees and deployment. So it's a lot of things, and adopting a new program of action. So that's what we'll be doing. Of course, it is not up to me to say what will happen. I will only cross that bridge when we get there, and I will announce it to you in terms of exactly the question you are asking, what will actually happen. And at the present moment, there is no crisis. The status quo still remains. And when anything happens in that regard, we'll give you an update.
Yeah, no matter how you look at it, Ncome, a reshuffle is very likely because of some of the elements of the vacancies you've mentioned and the latest developments. But as we know, the January 8th statement is not a presidential statement. It's a statement of the National Executive Committee. It's going to be interesting what they're going to be putting in it, particularly because the elephant, or rather, let's say, the buffalo in the room remains Phala.
And there's no way they can avoid it, but Mr. Mbalula, who's the Secretary General of the ANC, is of the view that this conference will not be seized with that matter. He was very clear when we asked that question. He said, don't even raise it. It's not going to be discussed at this conference, which is strange, by the way, because the previous NEC held 2 meetings after the Section 89 independent panel report was released. The then National Executive Committee of the ANC referred the matter to the National Working Committee, which sent it back to the NEC. And the NEC resolved that the new incoming NEC must deal with the matter, but they went further to say, hang on, let the highest decision-making gathering or body, which is the conference, deal with this matter. So the Integrity Commission's report on Phala, on President Cyril Ramaphosa over Phala, was going to form part of the organizational report to be discussed by the branch delegates at this 55th National Conference of the ANC. And a decision ought to have been taken, but then again, during the December aspect or leg of the conference, it was decided that no, that matter will then be deferred to the incoming NEC. Mr. Mbalula saying, no matter how you look at it, for this conference, which is expected to wrap up in the early hours of tomorrow, because they need to go through declarations and resolutions, Mr. Mbalula, as the Secretary General, needs to outline those declarations. The resolutions need to be adopted, and there has to be a closing address by the President of the ANC. So all of that will require an amount of time and work. So the expectation is that this conference will be closed early tomorrow morning. Let's take a listen to how Mr. Mbalula responded on the Phala question, basically saying it will be discussed if and when there is a need, but not at this conference.
Phala is not part of this conference, so please don't come with that. I'm telling you now, it will be discussed as and when it arises in the due process as we deal with the matter.
Yes, Siphamandla, just a quick one before I let you go. I'm going to be speaking to Slindile Masigane shortly in Cape Town. The matter of co-opting new members, particularly to address the issue of inclusivity in the NEC, that only has one white member and no Indian member at all. That came up very strongly towards the 20th of December. Do you think this particular closing meeting of the conference will address that?
Definitely, according to Mr. Mbalula, they will deal with that towards the end of the program. They will deal with the matter of Andile Lungisa, who was elected a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, whose membership was said to have been suspended. He's facing his own disciplinary and internal issues with the ANC, but he made it being elected an NEC member. So Mr. Mbalula said that matter of Mr. Lungisa will be the last one on the agenda, will be the last item to be discussed. Before that, they will have to deal with the issue of co-opting some NEC members. The constitution of the ANC does give that leeway for them to do that, to co-opt members. The ANC needs to have a difficult balancing act here. The national question of the minorities whites and Indians. But also, not only that, remember there is the issue, that thorny issue about alliance partners. There was an outcry when most of the senior leaders of the alliance, particularly the SACP and COSATU, did not make it and they were not elected as NEC members. Some felt that the alliance partners were closed out. So all of those considerations, the question or the national question of the minorities as well as the issue of the alliance partners will form part of the consideration. But definitely at the end or at the conclusion of this conference, the issue of co-opting NEC members will be finalized.